You're listening to the Leading Healthy Creative Teams podcast with Matt Curtis. This is the podcast that helps you take your creative team from wherever you are today to healthy and effective.
This week, we're going to talk about skills. Last week, we covered the first of the 4 creative cores, which was imagination. This week is skills. And then next week, we're going to be talking about heart. And then the final week of the 4, at least, of these 4 creative cores, that final week is going to be systems. So when we look at skills is something I think we all have a lot of handles on this term. We understand when somebody is skilled. See a professional athlete and they're skilled. They're very good at what they do. In a lot of cases, they make complexity seem simple. They make a play in the outfield and it is a difficult play. They make it look easy. That's one of the hallmarks of someone who has skill in an area. Oftentimes in the church, we tend to downplay skills in favor of gifts, which we elevate, which is an interesting tension for me. And I would say it's an interesting tension for the creative space, because the creative space is built foundationally on skills. You have to have a degree of skill in order to be competent in your trade. And I use that word trade intentionally here. I like to think of this really as like a craftsmanship trade type of environment. So yes, you're using your skills, you're using your creativity, your design, whatever skill set for the mission of the church. Absolutely. Your skills do not supersede that. Your skills are not more important than that reality. However, you have to have skills. You have to be competent in order to execute in the role that you're hired as a creative. And so this is why it becomes one of the 4 creative cores for me, because if you don't have skill, it's actually going to lead to problems in the organization, within the creative team, ultimately within the individual creative as well. So I want to take a look at what exactly it means for skills to be evident or to be nurtured in order to be moving toward a healthy creative team. Because again, that's our goal. Our goal is to build healthy creative teams. So how does skills play a part in that? Well, for me, one of the things I think that the church has a lot of opportunity to grow in is developing their people. Now, the term discipleship comes up pretty quickly here for me, simply because I don't view this as any different. I view a culture that is a discipling culture as the same as a culture that is a developing culture. And so part of that is because I look at my faith very holistically. I look at everything that I'm doing in every avenue of my life as a part of the expression of my faith, the lived outness of my faith. Part of that is, the school that I went to for undergraduate at Biola University. It was very, very steeped in this methodology that whatever you do for the glory of God. And so that means that if you become, radio, television, film, that was my first major. If you go into Hollywood and you make movies, then you do so to the glory of God. If you become a graphic designer, that was what my journey ended up becoming. Great, do so to the glory of God. If you become a theology professor, great, do so to the glory of God. But it's really the merging of our faith and our practice. And so it was startling for me. I mean, like shocking that there was not a movement toward me getting better in my trade as a member of a church staff. That blew my mind, continues to blow my mind. I think that the church should be a very development-heavy place because of the kind of my holistic view of what discipleship looks like. Now, I'm not saying discipleship is getting really good at your trade. It's not the same thing entirely. It doesn't only mean that. But I do think that's a component of what it looks like to grow in our ability to worship God, our pursuit of our faith, etc. So that being said, that's the approach that I take when it comes to skills. If your ministry context wants to be healthy in the creative space, have a healthy creative team, build a healthy creative team, you need to be encouraging your creatives to grow their craftsmanship and their ability to create. So there are two sides to this coin. There is the you should just do it because it's right side. And then there's the pragmatic benefit side. For me, I believe that this is something that you should be doing as a leader. You should be developing your people. And I understand that actually my my whole business exists because of this next sentence. I understand that pastors don't know how to develop creatives. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that you have to become a master, typographer or visual communicator or programmer or, audio mixer. I'm not saying you have to become the master of that, but you set the stage for how active growth will be in a team. So I can walk into any team in an organization and I can say, look, I don't know what you do, but I want you to get better at it. Tell me what you need in order to grow as whatever you do. If, let's say I'm talking to a woodworker. Great. What tools do you need? What training do you need? Is there a new technique that you need to learn in order for you to be more effective at the work you're doing? What kinds of things do you build? Oh, you build tables. Great. What kinds of things do you need to do to get better at building tables? Oh, you want to do joinery work. Okay. So you want to stop using screws and nails. Okay, great. So do you know how to do that? Not really. Okay. How can I help you learn how to do that? How can we find the people that are the craftsmen, and how can I pair you up with them so that you can grow in your skills? Okay. That's the I care for my people. In the process of discipling them, I'm trying to help grow them holistically in a lot of different areas. Great. That's that side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that the better your craftsmen are, the more benefit you gain in your organization. And that sounds selfish. It sounds self-serving, but let me kind of zoom out a little bit here. This is for the purpose of the mission of the church. So I like to think of it as, let's say you have a really highly skilled, artillery person in an army setting or a military setting. You have a specific challenge in the region that you're at war in, and you need a specific solution that only an expert can give you. That's how I view the creative endeavors. I don't think every church has to have a creative team. I genuinely believe that that's true. Now, some of that is born out of some cultures are intolerant of a healthy creative team, meaning they don't want to relinquish or to bring in people to certain conversations where the creative team needs to live in order to be effective and to benefit the church. So in some cases, it's actually not smart for a church to have a creative team. But for those churches that are doing work that have a unique problem they're trying to solve that the creative team can help solve, man, that is where the highly skilled craftsman becomes such an important element of your ministry approach. So be one who encourages craftsmanship and encourages the development of trade, deeper study, those types of things. So what this looks like played out, oftentimes for somebody who is very skilled in a proficiency, they're able to get things done well. Details are paid attention to. You're rarely missing the mark in terms of, typos or, major graphic issues. So there's a consistency. And what that shows is a degree of ownership of that craft, of that trade. And that's a really, really, it's a gift to the church, to be honest with you. It is such a beneficial thing to have somebody that cares at that level. Now, where you begin to see problems in a low skill type of a situation, projects don't really look consistent. There's not really a cohesive look across the organization, across the different communication pieces. That's an indicator from a low skill perspective. There are issues, there's typos. Sometimes, you go to a web page and it doesn't look right. Like the graphics are skewed, or it's hard to read. Like there's really like practical usability problems with it. And then there's actually a really interesting series of problems when skills is high, but other areas are deficient. And the biggest one that I found is that design actually becomes the goal, or the creative endeavor becomes the goal. And this is where you start getting into the showiness. This is where you start getting into, in some cases, just a hyper tone deafness. You get this incredibly like hip and urban design aesthetic, and it's like, the church is not that. Like you've lost the ability to communicate effectively to the congregation. Now you're just communicating to your own preferences. Like that's actually skills misapplied. And so there's other issues that are at play there. And so if you're seeing a lot of mistakes, or if you feel like, man, I feel like the work that's coming out just doesn't make sense for who we are as a church, those are the two primary signs that I see as a problem in the skills area. And again, skills may not be the root in some of these. Like some of these, you'll hear about it next week when we talk about heart. That tends to be a real a hinge point for a lot of this. Now, the flip side is when it's working, you're able to really stretch the team. Like you can, talking about imagination, you can imagine these crazy ideas, but then you have the skills to execute. You have the skills to get it done. You have the skills to see a dream into reality. Like it's so cool when you have this conversation and you have these ideas, and then the team actually like it happens. It's like, it's not always how you've envisioned it exactly, but you see it and you're like, this is what we were talking about 3 months ago when we were planning our Christmas Eve services, or yes, when we were brainstorming about how we wanted to promote our event, this is what I had in mind. This was the kind of thing that I was hoping would happen. That's what skills gives you in an organization, in the church. And so you'll hear things like, let me try a few things. We'd mentioned that in the first episode of this mini series. Let me try a few things. What that means is I am capable enough in my trade where the solution isn't the problem. I'm now going to pursue 4 different solutions because I can, because then it gives me a really effective way to compare which one I like the best. When you're getting the option to choose the best, like, man, we were on vacation recently, and there's just ice cream shops everywhere. And I mean, you want to do your best, support local businesses, right? I mean, that's what I was saying to myself. So there's all these flavors that I have not heard of, It's not like, I mean, they have vanilla, they have cookie dough, they have chocolate, like they have those flavors, but then they have other ones like cinnamon swirl. And I'm like, I don't even know what to do with this. So when skills is working, it's like you have a little bit of all of these ice creams so that you can choose the best one. You're not just like committed and saying like, well, I mean, let's go for cinnamon swirl and I hope it's pretty good, because like that's all we're able to do. Skills gives you so much flexibility. And so as a leader now, if you're leading a team and you recognize, even if I just say the word, is your team skilled? You can probably answer that question. You can probably say, yeah, you know what? I know my team is pretty low on skill. Okay, be proactive. This is the act part of things. When you see a problem, and this is actually, this is a foundational problem with creative teams in general. Creatives, I'll just say, creatives are very sensitive. Not in the like, oh, they're snowflakes, not that kind of sensitivity. I mean, we get really frustrated when things drift off course, when things are off mission. I can't tell you the number of times I was frustrated in a conversation, not because I disagreed with the heart behind the mission or, the ministry or whatever. It's because I believed deeply that mission event or that ministry event did not move forward the mission of the church. I believed that there was not alignment between the two. So, I mean, if anything, I was a more active advocate for the mission of the church than anybody else on staff, because I'm throwing up red flags about these events that everybody else is like, it's fine, just do it. And I'm looking big picture. I'm looking at the congregation and I'm saying, these things, they don't fit. They don't belong right. And so with the reason that was happening is because I was highly sensitive to these inconsistencies. That's where creatives tend to find the most, that's the diving board to toxicity, we'll say. When you have too many of those things, it really gets frustrating. And so when you are on a team and the creative knows this before anybody, I would say. The creative knows that skills are a problem, whether it be a coworker, whether it be with themselves. They know that there is a skills gap. So if they know that, and then even worse, they know that you know that and you're not doing anything about it, you're actually fostering toxicity in the team. You're leading the team toward a toxic result, because the calm person, the creative person, the designer, the artist, whatever, wherever on that spectrum they fall, they can't tolerate being in that situation. And that's the opportunity of leadership. And that's what, that's why this is leading healthy creative teams, because there is a leadership element here that says, look, you're not a creative, fine. You know how to lead people towards health now, though. And so really putting the deepening of skills on your radar as a very clear objective for the team that you lead, that's going to be really important for you as you're helping your creative team get healthier, as you're helping them grow in their skills for the purpose of moving them toward the health that you're desiring for your team. And if you have high skills, but there are other issues, we'll talk about it. Primarily, the biggest problem I've seen I'll bring this up in skills simply because we're talking about skills. Skills tends to be the quickest place of toxicity when heart is low. And so we'll talk more about heart next week. So I don't want to go double length here just to bring it up. But if your team is extremely gifted and talented, but they're not interested in anybody else's opinion, then we probably have a heart issue, and that's going to be a really significant thing to address and to deal with, meaning it's a priority. Like, it's critical that you pay attention to the heart challenges. So next week, make sure you're listening to that one, because that's going to be a critical one. So that's skills. It's the trade skills, it's the craftsmanship, the summation of all of it. If you have people on your team that aren't competent at the execution of their trade, help them get competent. And that will be a major catalyst toward moving your team toward health.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Leading Healthy Creative Teams. This podcast is just one of the ways Lunchtime Heroes helps build healthy creative teams in the church. Stay up to date on the latest by signing up for the Creative Bites email at lunchtimeheroes.co.